Good morning. Welcome to Sales Chatter, the coughing podcast where we give you some coughs every 5 minutes. Just joking here, but this is the
Hoping
podcast
you
where
get
we
to a
aim.
million.
Yeah, exactly. Like how to get 10,000 coughs to get a million GP. There we go. That's what we're doing here. I'm your co-host Ryan Mohammed. With me is my good friend, the man himself, Dan Deacon. How you doing this morning, brother?
I'm doing good, brother. How are you, man?
Can't complain, man. Can't complain. A little self promo. I did the Dat IQ live show this morning with Ken Adamo and Dean Croak, who's always here every Wednesday for Data Day, and it was a blast. Those guys are awesome, amazing conversations, and just kind of see the interactions with the audience and the questions that they kind of had. It was pretty cool.
What was the best question you got asked?
Yes, the best question I got was as a dispatcher. So that's big in the U.S. We don't really have dispatchers here in Canada, but as a dispatcher, what is the best way to form relationships with carriers? So my answer was, go door knock. Treat this as a door-to-door salesman. Go meet people. Forget the email. Forget the phone calls. Put a face to the name. Bring value to them. Take some coffee. So take some donuts. Be that person who they can actually see that they put a face to the name. So that was kind of one of my favorite questions that I answered. And then Dean asked me who was my favorite wrestler. So The Rock, if you smell what The Rock is cooking, for some reason he said the Iron Sheik, and I was like, Dean, we'll have to question him on that on tomorrow's show.
On tomorrow's show. The Rock is your favorite wrestler.
Yeah, The Rock, man. I grew up with The Rock, man. I grew
That's
up with
true. Yeah, you
wrestling.
did. Yeah,
Yeah, I grew up
yeah.
with The Rock, so The Rock is my guy. I've always liked him versus like Austin, The Rock, and just the kind. You know what? I like good people too. So I think he's been a person who's like given back so much, and he's just a great role model for anybody kind of getting there. So I would hate to hear the news of like some kind of like bad stuff he's done.
Scandal or
Maybe
something.
yeah. I just hope. I really pray that that doesn't happen. So yeah.
See, I grew up with the generation before that, so mine was the Ultimate
Ah,
Warrior, the Heart Foundation, Roddy Piper, George
ah,
the Animal Steel. Like
that's
I
my
grew up
dad.
during
Yeah.
that. Yeah, it was. It was. I remember my first wrestling event was at the Forum in Montreal,
Ooh.
and it was like such an eye-opening experience. I think I was like 10 or 11, and I'd had all the rubber wrestling dolls and everything like
Yep.
that, and like the Hulk Hogan's, and it was just like wow. And of course I was 10 or 11, so I was about 3'2", and like these people were just giants, right? Just like
Yes.
enormous men, and I was just like whoa. But yeah, totally cool. We used to take our in the apartment we lived in. Funny story. We used to drag our beds, our actual mattresses into the basement, and
And
then
then
use my dad's mic stands as corner posts, and we would wrap it with tape, and we would actually have a wrestling ring. I can't tell you how many times my brother suplexed me when I was a kid.
yep.
Maybe that's why I'm a little off. That could be because I mean
It can be a tribute to it, a little trauma, a little physical trauma. It's funny, man. But the things that we like when my cousins come over, we do like the power bombs, and it was just like a surprise that nobody got hurt, like actual. So it was awesome, man. So it was like really,
I'm
really
sure there was a few concussions, but we just didn't know that they were concussions back then. But
exactly. You just
yeah, yeah. But when we're younger, Brian, our bodies move in ways that it would hurt my back just thinking about it right now. You know what I'm saying? So, I've always said as a kid, you can break your arm and it grows back and it heals on your way home to go tell your mom about it. But
easily. It's a
yeah, yeah.
mindset thing, right? And it's kind of cool. So we'll get into today's video, and then we'll talk about today's topic. Let's go.
To the HPLS podcast. Live, relevant, and high performance information, conversations, and education weekly.
I love that wrestling talk. Wrestling talk is pretty cool. Maybe start up a little wrestling podcast kind of going. But Dan, you've been back. It's almost a week tomorrow. How you feel being back?
Yeah,
Give me the good news, my man.
it's good, my friend. I do notice my voice suffers for it, but if like anything else, if you don't work it out, it's not going to get stronger. I felt that a couple of times this week where it's, I come on here and we have a conversation and then I'm starting to make more calls, starting to have more conversations during the day. And at nighttime, it's right where the tumor was is just, it kills. But it's getting better and better every day. And as long as I see upward improvement, as much as it's, this wants to go a million miles an hour, but this is not ready to go a million miles an hour yet. So it's challenging at times, but like with anything else, I was talking to a neighbor of mine the other day, and he says, "You know what, Dan, you're on this side of the grass." I said, "Yep, I know." So it's good. It's good. It's good. I'm loving being back. I'm loving having the conversations with you, brother. I'm looking forward to Jeff coming back. Hopefully, he got a new internet connection and he's good to go, and we can rock and roll and we can hammer it out.
Yeah, man, it's gonna be it's only up from here. So today, I kind of want to talk about a little bit about what logistics has done for us. I think it's and especially with the viewers kind of watching, this is not about like, oh, logistics bought my house or bought my car. It's not about that. It's just what you've kind of learned in that. And the one thing that logistics has done for me, Dan, is prior to logistics, I was doing customer service for about 7 years, and it's crazy to me how I was able to transfer, I want to say 100% of what I learned in customer service for like a telecom company, into logistics and supply chain. And that's why I kind of take like a servant kind of like mindset. I want to talk to my customers, talk to my carriers, my team, my ops, customer service, all that stuff. Like, how can I help? And being that person to actually truly want to help. And I know we'll probably quote Zig Ziglar's, if you help somebody, you'll get exactly what you want by helping somebody get what they want. But I think for me, it's really important to kind of always magnify what you've learned and always continue improving. For yourself, Dan, what did you find out about yourself, like being in logistics? Obviously, you've been in logistics longer than I have, but when is the time that you kind of like stopped and you're like, "Holy crap! Like I really learned this trait or this skill because of what I've been doing for the past couple of years."
Um, it was probably about 7 years in, 7 or 8 years in, that the biggest thing it taught me is that I was worth something. And like I'm a grade 9 dropout. When I was growing up, it was always, well, you got to go to college, you got to get a good education to get a good job. And it was when I dropped out of high school, it was a very limited vision that I had, and even going into logistics, still very limited vision. Like there was never a long term thought of being in this industry, and it was about 7 years in when I finally made the realization, like, well, I can actually do this. I can actually help people, even though I might have half the education that they have, because I have a skill that I learned that they haven't learned yet. And that was a huge eye opener for me, like huge. And I mean, I was into my early 30s before I realized that, right? And it was a crazy eye opener one day when I walked out of a meeting and we landed the business, and like I was in a boardroom with, I mean, I guess at 30 you are a man, but with men like in their 50s and 60s, and six of them with suits and ties, and a massive multi-billion-dollar company this was a board deal. And never thought anyone would ever listen to me because I'm a grade 9 drop. Like you have this perception of you in your own head, right? I'm a grade 9 dropout, and they were on every word of the presentation, and it that taught me that I'm worth something. And it also taught me that no matter where your origins are, if you put in enough time, effort, and energy of your own to get really good at what you do, it doesn't matter where you came from. And that's probably been, I mean, besides meeting my wife, my soulmate in this industry, like I owe everything to this industry, man. And I know you said, didn't buy your house or whatever, but it's like I met my wife in this industry. I've met some of the greatest people like yourself, like Jeff in this industry, like Dean. I have friends. My first customer ever is still one of my really good friends, Bob McKenna. Like really good friends. I call him up and he dropped whatever he was doing to help me, and I do the same for him. I've met some really cool people in this
Yeah.
industry, and it's the one thing I love about it is it's ever changing. Like you can never sit there and say I know it all,
Yeah.
and that's what I love about it. You talk about being a servant. You know, when I transitioned my mentality to be a servant over a commission, um, the business changed. It was a game changer, like a complete game changer, and that's where your mindset should be. Unfortunately, we had a lot of people have that hierarchy in a business where you got to put numbers on the board, right? And maybe they
Yep.
can't be of that servant nature. They have to put numbers on the board. And then we'll get into that kind of stuff on a different episode. But yeah, that's for me was probably the biggest thing that is, knowing your own self-worth. Like not, and I don't want to say, Ryan, necessarily doing things for free, but getting a commission on it, like everything. So, right, when I met my wife, I pursued her, and my commission is we're married. It's like
Yeah.
Grant Cardone talks about. Everything has a commission. Now, it's not necessarily monetary. I've pursued friendships, and I've kept up with friendships. So that effort that I put into those friendships has now, Bobby and I, 30 years later, are still really good friends. Right? That kind of, that's what I'm saying. So it's that initial, for me anyways, it was that initial, I'm useless, I can't do anything, I'm a grade 9 dropout, I'll never become anything, to holy crap, I actually have worth in this world. And it was like the game changer for me, the game changer.
Yeah, and finding your self-worth, and I like that you shared that, because you said it was like 7 or 8 years into the industry. And one thing we kind of talked about, a little plug here, but yesterday launched episode 3 of Logistics Monk Show, and we had an author, her name was Crystal, and she was talking about that as well, talking about like self-worth is like, when I do these publications, am I worthy of this? And when you kind of shift your mindset that, like, I get to do this, and I kind of tell people all the time, it doesn't matter. I think I had a conversation with another friend, and he was like mentioning, like, oh my God, there's so many podcasts out there, there's so many content out there. It's like, you should be happy about that. Like, everyone's kind of sharing their voice, sharing their, and it's up to you, because even for myself, if I wanted to listen to every single podcast that I wanted to, Dan, I just don't have the time for it, or make the time, so like for me, I get 2 45-minute walks, that's with my dogs. I'll put on 2 podcasts, and then I'll go to the gym for maybe an hour, so that's another three podcasts. Some people, maybe one is a lot, right? So I think for me, what logistics has given me, it's given me a bit, I wouldn't say my self-worth as well, because I've always kind of been confident in myself, just based on who I am as a person. But I'll tell you this: the first time I've been in like that boardroom meeting, with like big wigs, like as you said, man, I was like, what do I do? Like, okay, so let's peel the curtain a little bit. Like, even when I went to your training, and that's how you and I met. For everybody who doesn't know that, I met Dan through a training. Our company sent us a training, and we found out that this was Dan's first training, with people, and got to meet some really cool people. And I clicked with Dan right away. But even being there, and I'm looking aside, like I'm looking at some people in our company. These guys are doing big numbers, and I just started at this company. And then I look at people in different companies, and they're having big numbers. And then after the meeting is done, we had like a kind of confidential private meeting, and then even being part of that was like, oh my God, this is so cool. Meanwhile, before, if my boss took me out to lunch, that was a big deal to me, but that became a regular occurrence to me. So I thank you for sharing that, brother.
Yeah, Ryan, we always go through these things in life, right? I think you have to, because that's where you level up your game, right? And when your company came to the event, the only conversation was, how are we going to level up the game? And even 30-year reps came with you that day, got something out of it. And it's you never know. You never know where it's going to come from. You could have been. I've been to many, many, many conferences, and some were free, and I would have paid 20 grand to be there, and some I paid 10 grand to be there, and I would want my money back.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So it's just what's going on up here, and it's like we've said 100,000 times before. You enter the conversation where they are. Right. That is really one of the key strategies for any sales rep, is, how do I enter the conversation where you're already having it? Right. You look at what you just went through by switching service providers. If a service provider would have come to your door and offered you a doorbell that recorded instead of faster internet, it wouldn't have worked.
Yeah.
Because you're like, well, I don't really need that right now. I need faster internet. But now you have your faster internet, you're loving it. You haven't gone down, like you know what I mean? So now it's not only that, it's making you more productive.
Yes.
Because any interruption in our day, like when we're focused on a task, right, and we're doing something, when we get interrupted, there's a good, like, statistically, they say there's a good 25 minutes before we get back into that groove. Doorbell rings, whatever the case may be, where we're not in sync there. The human brain goes off, and then it comes back, then it goes, and then it sits back down with this task. You do that a couple of times a day. I mean, you think of how much time of really dedicated time is lost to the craft you're trying to perfect.
Yeah.
Because make no mistake, you have to try and perfect it, especially in logistics. Like, I know there's certain, quote unquote jobs out there that, you don't really need to try and get better every day. But ours isn't one of them. Like, ours is one of the ones where you have to try everything you can to be better today than you were yesterday, because you owe it to your clients, you owe it to your team, you owe it to your company,
You owe it to your family, man. You gotta,
you owe it to
you
your
gotta,
family.
that's the most important thing, that you got to level up every single day. And that's why we bring on Dean on every Wednesday. But somebody might be like, for me, what shifted with me was that, hey, you're spewing all these kind of numbers and spot stuff. I don't really work at spot, but like, as me, how can I take this information and put the Ryan spin? We talked about this with AI yesterday. Like, how can you take this information that's readily available? Like, Jason Miller is a great follow on LinkedIn. Dean Croak, amazing follow for data. How can you take that information and make it the Dan information to your customer? How can you make it the Ryan? Because I feel like people kind of go for the low hanging fruit when they're communicating with customers. Like, let's say when a company gets bought. I think Knight bought Swift, or Swift bought Knight. I forget what that was, but how many people would have took that article and been like, "Hey, what are your thoughts?" But like other like kind of people who level up, and what I've learned in logistics is read that article, what matters to you, and ask that question. Like they said that 3% of drivers are XXX. These are my thoughts. What do you think? And that's where we kind of get to that level up, instead of just getting POs, entering them in, and dispatching them. Life in logistics is more than just being an order taker.
Yep. Yeah, I love that you brought that up, because what you've just done is you've prepared yourself to have an authentic conversation.
Yep.
And it- you know that was a good decade before I realized I could have actual authentic conversations with people. Like, I wasn't just there to get into their wallet.
Yeah.
And um, it was an unbelievable feeling when you realize that you can have a phone call. I don't think there's a good or a bad phone call. I honestly don't. You can have a phone call. And at the end of the phone call, you can be like, okay, that obviously was not the right prospect for me, or this has potential, just based on a candid conversation.
Hmm.
Like, that's it. And you think about that. What other industry can you have really cool conversations all day long, help people achieve their goals, and make a fortune doing it?
Yeah.
Like for any shipper
Sign my
watching,
job.
yes, there's a lot of money to be made in brokerage, but the money you make is always a direct representation of the value you bring, right? Like call a spade a spade. If you're robbing every one of your customers, you're going to have a revolving door.
Yeah. I was gonna be chasing
But if you're
customers.
fair, yeah, exactly. If you're fair and honest, you can make a very, very, very lucrative living by having authentic conversations every day, helping people achieve their goals, and watching people grow all around you. Like, to me, that's like gold everywhere. Watching people go from beginning operations to being a team lead on someone's team, maybe not even on my team, but on someone's team. It's like, man, I was responsible for that. I had when I first started, I had 3 operations people. They're now running operation teams in multi like billion-dollar companies. And it was like wow, like they were just literally booking my freight, and now they've done so well for themselves. It's not, I'm not saying it was me that did it for them, they did it for themselves, but it's great to see that. It's
And just see
really
the
great to see
progression.
people. Yeah.
Yeah, see that
Yeah.
progression of life too, and it's just like the same thing too. Like we can always attest to this. Like your nieces and nephews, you see them grow up and become like. I'm at that age now that like if I go to the club, I'll probably see like my nieces and nephews that like I raise as like little diapers and stuff like that. So I don't go to the club much often anymore. But it's just having that feeling of gratitude, knowing that hey, I might not have been the reason why they've kind of accomplished, but like I would have had something to deal with it. I might. It's like a
Yeah.
soup, right? It's like I might have not put the ingredients into that soup, but I could have put a little salt in there, a little pepper in there, a little
Yeah.
spice in there, and that's perfectly fine with me. And that's what I love seeing. I love seeing on LinkedIn when we kind of see people just upgrade, just kind of like, and it means to say, right, like upgrading your life with logistics looks different ways. Like for myself, I'll publicly say this, I love being a freight agent. I'm able to do this, I'm able to do other amazing things. We have something we're working on together that I think is going to be one of the best things ever hit, and I'm able to kind of do those things. But then some people, they love being like, they love to lead people, they want to be a director, they want to be a VP of sales, they want to make a name for themselves, they kind of want to go that
Yep.
progression of, hey, maybe I'll open up my own company one day. So I think when you kind of figure out your why and what works for you and your scheduling, and you've got to figure it out yourself too. I feel like you can get your mentors and your inner circle and all that stuff, and they can provide different ideas to you. But I'm the type of person, Dan, that my mind is already made up even before I ask for advice. I know that's really bad, but I kind of like to kind of take my own advice and kind of see. I know that God is not going to lead me down the wrong path, but I think it's really cool that you just said about the three operations people kind of crushing it right now.
Yeah. And you know what, Ryan? It's not, we started it. We had a quick conversation before we got on about ego. And that's not ego, that you're confident in your decision. God will lead you down a path, and that path might be to learn a lesson. Right? We all know that.
Mhm.
And you'll be going down that path, and you'll be like, now I get it. Change course and
Yep.
go a different route, right? So it's like universe, God, whatever you want to call it. There's these guidances, and there's these call them signs or whatever, that we all have our own way of seeing, to go down this path. And I love the fact that you do so much thinking about it. You research it. You kind of, okay, how am I going to do that? What would it look like and then you start asking advice from people, because I've many times 2 words, 3 words from somebody. It's just like, yeah, that's what I kind of needed to hear. I knew it
Yeah.
was right, but you just kind of needed to hear that. And it's like anything, right? I mean, I know the whole cliche is you're standing in the grocery lineup and you look at one of those trashy Inquirer magazines, and all of a sudden an idea sparks in your head, and it's a multi-billion-dollar idea. You know what I mean? But it's true. It's true. And I can tell you, my customers have given me the best tools to help me get other customers,
Yes. Yeah. Yep.
right? And they're the best teachers on the planet, and they're the best salespeople on the planet. And the day I learned that customer A does not want the same thing customer B wants, everything changed.
Yeah, it's not a one size fit all. It's not to be added on a lead list to get like it's deeper than that, and actually like having that conversation. I think that that's the one thing I've learned with logistics as well, Dan, is as I'm kind of progressing. But you know what? Well, maybe we'll talk about this because we're coming up to a couple minutes here. But I've learned so much in logistics in terms of that there's no right way to success. I know a lot of people kind of talk about, oh, hey, you got to be niche driven, you got to do this, you got to do this. And my first job at the first place that I worked at, I wasn't niche. I was taking anything and everything, and I was only there for a year, so I really can't talk about how sustainable it was because I had all my customers from day one still stick with me for that 1 year. But I really, and that's when I was cradled to the grave. But then when I kind of switched it over, and I was like, well, let's try to build, let's try to be niche driven. But your boy got into show freight, and then COVID happened. So that was kind of a little sour for me. And you kind of got to go different verticals. But I think I saw a post, Dan, and I'd like to ask you this question as well. A couple weeks ago, was that somebody said, "Hey, if you're making an Easter basket, and you were to put 5 things that your customers like make, like whatever they ship or whatever they do, what would your basket look like?" Right? And just to see the variance in answers, there was nobody that said it was just one thing that they had in their basket. They had different eggs in their baskets, and that's like diversifying as well, right, Dan?
Yep, 100%. I often said, uh, I had a very similar saying. I said, if you were to pop an umbrella and you were able to just keep 5 things dry, what would they be?
Mm.
Same scenario, same question, just a different way of putting it. And um, you know, when it comes to the niche business, when it comes to cradle to the grave, when it comes to all these different variables in the business, one is golden for certain people,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
I know a guy. He does some of the biggest numbers I've ever seen in my life. 300,000-400,000 GP a week,
Whew.
and he's in niche. He's in grocery. It's only grocery, and this guy is like a monster. Like, he'll make or break a company by coming or going, right? Like, just
Wow.
an animal. Another guy I know, he is one customer. He has one customer and does like 5 million a year GP. One customer. And to me, I would be terrified to have one customer
Me
and
too.
all
Yeah.
my business is with that customer, because I find you're leaving yourself. But he's going on 15 years now.
And that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Zero
Love it.
concerns, zero concerns.
And that's
But
why
it's individual.
it's a division, and that's what we said, right? That's why I always tell people, like, take everything with a grain of salt, and what works for
Yeah,
you works for you. We're here to kind of give you a guide, but I will never say, hey, do this, do that, do that. I'll say, hey, these are my experiences. If you can take something from it, just like with yourself, Dan, right? It's like, if this is what I've learned in my career. If there's something that can help you, then amazing. If not, then it's all good. Like, maybe
yeah,
we'll not necessarily agree to disagree, because I never look at this as a conflict. It's always about like helping each other out. And that's the one thing I've learned as well in logistics, Dan, is that since I've been on the show as Sales Chatter, the collaboration that I've done with like other brokers and other like you would quote unquote call them competitors is amazing. Like, you think about it too. Like, Jeff and I were on the show while you were away, and Jeff is a direct competitor of mine, right? And we're collaborating every single day, and we want to learn from each other and things like that. And that I recommend everybody do that. We see Kat, we see Lisa, everybody just collaborate with people and like understand like where you can kind of pick and choose what works for you. And then, like we said, somebody will pick and choose from you as well.
yeah. And here's the thing, competition. It's a very limiting word, because it instills that there's there's the pie, and if Ryan gets this piece, I won't have a piece. But we're like a $776 trillion industry, right? There's a piece of the pie for everyone that
There's
wants to
different pies.
carve
There's
their.
so much pies.
I actually like that even better, Ryan. There's different pies,
Yeah.
so you carve your piece out, right? Like you carve your section out, whether you want to be, and you go back to this niche conversation, geographical, right?
Yeah.
Like every single location in North America could use a geographical expert who knows all the players, understands the rhythm of the freight, understands what happens when this happens, and you can make a very good living just understanding that. And if you stick to it, eventually within 3 to 5 years, people will be coming to you.
Yep.
Because you pick a state like California, for example. The ups and downs in California is like crazy. It's like the biggest roller coaster in North America. But if you fully understand when nuts are coming out, why trucks are drying up, you go to the Northeast, and when you start understanding 6 to 7 trucks a day of chopped lettuce go back and forth, that's why at certain times you can't find reefers. Like, if you understand any of these metrics, you can become a geographical expert.
Yep.
In no time. There's a niche for that. And certain people, right? If you want to only work with 5 carriers, there's a niche for that. If you want to do a commodity driven, there's a niche for that. Like, it works for some people. When I first started, the best advice I got when I first started was somebody said, go after products you use, because you could
Yes.
talk about
Raving
those products
fan.
with passion. Yeah.
Raving fan.
Fan. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Shout out to Chad on that one with the pre-workout
Chad, yeah.
company. Yeah,
Yeah.
pre-workout. And I think that's so when I got started, I was actually the same way. Actually, I was told go after products that you like, and then watch Dragon's Den or Shark's Tank. And then kind of go after those companies after there. And there's, like we said, there's so many good things. I've said it here so many times that what's worked for me is I go on Indeed and I look for transportation manager postings. Call them, because if they haven't left yet, they're gonna take you with you, and then you could get the new person in and get a fresh start. So I think
There
there's
you
so
go.
many ways, man. There's really so many ways. There's Import Yeti, and like we said, I'll take this from Jeff, but there's many ways to skin a cat. Can't believe I just said that, but that's what happens of being 6 months with Jeff.
I was surprised you don't have the big handlebar chops yet.
No, that's the Halloween. Maybe for Halloween I'll be Jeff for Halloween. But as we're coming up to the end of today's episode, Dan, what's your biggest takeaway for somebody who is getting into the industry, or they've been in the industry, and they can't see that light at the end of the tunnel, but based on your experience, what's your advice to them?
Stop changing directions so much. It would be the only thing I could really say is when things don't work out, it could be because you're not allowing one thing to kind of take its turn before you say it works or it doesn't work. I've spoken to so many salespeople, and it's like every phone call I try a different process, and nothing seems to work. And I said, well, because you haven't allowed one to work through.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
just allow it to work through. You never know. I mean, and listen, this is a marathon. This is not a sprint. And don't compare yourself to the next person that might be killing it right now.
Yeah.
Because you're you, not them. Not them. And you never know. They might be killing it because they're dropping rates left, right, and center, and they're dropping their pants. And sooner or later, they're going to hate every single customer that they have. Be you, do you. People will come and people will work with you. Nobody works with a logo. Nobody.
No way at all. And I smirked when he said that because I had a conversation with another sales rep this morning. We talked like in the morning and in the afternoon. Shout out to Krishna. And he said, like we talked about that, it's not a marathon. I'm sorry, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. You can sprint though. There is time. Well, here, the one thing I kind of explained to him was like, there's time for sprints, but there's time for marathons, so there's time to go at it and there's time to ease up a little bit. So, want to thank everybody for coming out this morning. We're having tons of fun on Sales
Well, what's
Chatter
your
Live.
answer to that question, Ryan? You can't just go in.
Oh,
and just,
okay. Yeah, like
you see that, everyone. You see how he's trying to avoid that. You see that he just
no. I like you to have the final
subscribe, hit the
words,
button,
man. I'm being an accommodating host. Like
yeah. I want
like
to
how
hear
you
your
do it.
answer.
Yeah, exactly. My tip for somebody kind of coming into the industry is kind of, I think, okay, I'll say with this: quantity until quantity becomes quality, and really put in the work. And not necessarily put in the work, but believe in yourself. So it's the same thing that like everybody knows. Like I got my YouTube channel. I know my first 100 videos are gonna suck, and regardless of whatever happens, right? I might have forgot to edit this part or forgot to do that, but I know that if I continue doing it, I'm gonna look back and say, "Hey, I did 100 videos." And same thing with like your phone calls, your emails, the way that you reach out to your customer, the way that you learn. Treat the way that you prospect as well as the way you learn. If you can learn one or two things, and there's so many resources out there. Dean's blog on that. There's Freight Waves, and find things that are relevant to you. But I would say quantity until it becomes quality.
That's good, buddy.
There we go. So
let's do it.
All right, awesome. So I want to thank everybody for coming out today. We had so much fun with you all. It's already Tuesday. It's at this wonky weather across Canada itself. But if you found value in this, please like, comment, subscribe, share with everybody. The neighbor, your best friend, the Amazon driver is bringing your packages today. Make sure that you'll catch the replay back on at 2 and 6 p.m. Eastern time, and tune in for tomorrow, the best day of the week that I personally think, which is Data Day with principal analysis at DAT Freight and Analytics, Dan Croak. Dan, take us home, my man.
Sorry, I had myself on mute there. Listen, everybody, just again, you have worth. Figure out your worth and just give her. That's it.